Joining me now to talk more about this new ethics law is the former head of the State Lobbying Commission, David Grandow. That body, of course, that he used to head was replaced with the current ethics group, the Commission on Public Integrity. Grandow has been one of the biggest critics of that entity's work. Also with us is Russ Haven from NYPIRG. He was standing with state leaders today for the announcement in the Red Room, and he has been integral in this whole process of coming up with this particular bill. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay, so Russ, I'd like to start with you. This is actually a pretty complicated piece of legislation. We saw the governor actually go and call it historic, go to great pains to try and explain certain ins and outs of it, and it's really actually quite complex. One thing that I think is a little bit confusing is the breakup where you have 8 commissioners appointed by the legislature and 6 appointed by the executive. That seems like the legislature continues to oversee something when the governor said self-policing was not something he could support. So what's going on there?
Well, the current commission has 7 members appointed by the governor and 6 through other sources, and NYPIRG and other groups were concerned about that because the governor can control that commission. So in this configuration, in this proposal, the governor would get 6 votes, 3 Democrats, 3 Republican, and from the legislative side, it would be 8 votes or 8 appointees total, with 4 of those Republican and 4 of them Democrat.
Right.
So, it's not self-policing in the respect that for the first time you would have an outside entity be able to potentially investigate a legislator and refer possible violations of the ethics law.
But in order to get there, however, you have to have this sort of cumbersome voting process where you need a certain number of people with a certain number of party affiliations voting. I mean, I understand that, as the governor put it, that you want to avoid a political witch hunt, but it does seem a little bit cumbersome.
It's definitely a little bit like Olympic ice skating. You know, the voting is a little bit complex, and like every piece of legislation, this one's a compromise. And in this respect, there were concerns of one party being targeted by the other, or
right.
The governor and the speaker teaming up, tag teaming the Senate majority, particularly given the precariously thin majority the Senate has, and this is, you know, at the end of the day, this is the compromise. So it's certainly not perfect, but the current situation is where you have 100% self-policing with the Legislative Ethics Commission, which is comprised of all legislators, essentially decides whether or not any one of its members have crossed the line.
Okay, so David, let's bring you into the mix here. I know that the good government groups have been working very hard on this. Russ, for example, has been involved, and I know that, as he said, it's a compromise, but yet there is a feeling that this position that we have now is better than is not as good as what's going to be, and this would not go into effect until the next January, actually, and so it would not actually come into effect to implicate, or to oversee, rather, this current sitting legislature. In your opinion, however, does this leave something to be desired?
Well, look, Liz, I've been saying for a long time, any legislation, and I was in full support of the legislation that got passed last year and then vetoed by Governor Patterson, but any legislation that results in the Public Integrity Commission being dissolved and Barry Ginsburg no longer running that commission, I think is an improvement over what we presently have.
Okay, but we're going to see that, right? Isn't that what...
I don't know. I haven't seen a bill. Russ has me at a disadvantage. Right. Russ, you've seen a bill already, right?
Well,
I've seen very late-stage drafts, yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, those late-stage drafts that Russ got to see weren't disclosed. So it's kind of ironic that the good government groups that want more disclosure are involved in this, but not disclosing what they know, and that's the problem. It's not.
Well, hold on. They're disclosing what they know. They're just not able to share a bill. I mean, Russ is obviously here. He's talking about what he knows,
yep.
But he's not able to share a piece of legislation. And to be honest, I mean, do you really think it's the government groups? They've been calling for transparency, certainly, but isn't it doesn't it fall under the responsibility of the governor and the legislative leaders to share that bill?
There's no shortage of hypocrisy when it comes to integrity or ethics legislation in Albany. The key part, though, will be, do we change the people that are in charge of regulating this industry? If you have the same chef just using a different recipe and different ingredients, he's still going to make people sick. We need to change who's ever doing the cooking in the kitchen right now.
Russ, do you agree?
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that people make a huge difference. I mean, when David Grandow was selected to head the Lobby Commission, most people didn't know who he was. And David, I think no one would have guessed that you turned out to be, one of the fiercest watchdogs in Albany. And we hope that those kinds of picks, people of that quality and that integrity, end up on the commission. But there's no crystal ball, so we tend to focus on structure. And we agree with you. I mean, it was time for a change. This commission has been rightly criticized, and the fact that the legislature skates free only to be policed by federal prosecutors and the FBI. There's a change long overdue. And by the way, if this doesn't work, one of the things we pushed for is a 3-year look-back commission, so we can at least create the dialogue about, okay, is this working, is it not, and how do we fix it?
Well, we should also at least point out that the Legislative Ethics Commission, which has also been roundly criticized for pretty much doing almost nothing, with the exception of just shortly before, mysteriously, timing-wise, pretty much calling out Assemblyman Boylan, who had already been involved in the whole scandal with Senator Carl Kruger and a lobbyist, Richard Lipsky, and some other folks. I mean, they call him out about a week before this announcement takes place in Albany, not even less than a week. That thing continues to exist. So that's also a little bit of continued self-policing, is it not?
Well, I think it certainly is, Liz. And just to Russ's point, and this is the problem, and I've had this discussion with Russ's predecessor, Blair Horner, and I'll have it with Russ over and over again. I agree, you can't legislate people, and you don't know what you're going to end up with. But what you can do is once you see someone isn't doing the job, you can be, upfront and tell people they're not doing the job. And I, quite frankly, didn't hear anyone else saying John Feerick should resign. I didn't hear anyone saying Herb Teitelbaum should resign.
Well, David Patterson actually tried to get the entire Public Integrity Commission to dissolve, and they basically told him, forget it, go jump off a cliff, and they stuck around.
And turned around and started an investigation of him while he had a bill sitting on his desk awaiting his signature that would have eliminated them, and none of us knew it because they didn't disclose it. The job is for people that do pay attention to this when they see wrongdoing to come forward. And quite frankly, the only one that's done it was Joe Fish at the IG. And if you read that IG report, one of the people that he called out as having tried to obstruct his investigation is Barry Ginsburg. And
well,
Barry Ginsburg is now running the Public Integrity
Before we
Commission.
let this get dissolve into a personal thing, because we do understand, I do know your position. I think we've had you on the show and talked about it before. Let's talk about this particular piece of legislation that we expect that we'll be seeing, Russ, tomorrow. We believe the governor said there will be, as early as tomorrow, a draft bill, or the bill will be drafted, rather. One thing that it does not do is significantly strengthen campaign finance. And I know that's something that good government groups have been talking about for some time. Obviously, the governor said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, essentially. But it is a problem, is it not? I mean, that is an area of serious corruption.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern for me is this sort of joined at the hip relationship that many lawmakers have with lobbyists, where the lobbyists come to them during the day and ask for bills and budget items, and then at night the legislators go to their fundraisers. Often they provide political consulting and strategy. So we need to get at that kind of pay-to-play culture. We pushed as much as we could and got no traction with the legislature in terms of including pay-to-play in this proposal. The governor's committed. He said publicly he's committed to doing a campaign finance bill. Supposedly they've got something in the hopper, but that's the other part, because as long as lobbyists and their clients have that route, you're always going to have extraordinary influence peddling.
David, do you believe that the revealing of a client list for, be it a private consultant or who's also a legislator or an attorney, is actually going to serve to reveal or to clean things up. I mean, the thing is, the devil's a little bit in the details. Again, I could keep referring to this so that we don't have the bill yet, but it's you have to disclose if you or your firm have someone who has significant business before the state, and you need to let the public know. But there's no ban that says you can no longer actually represent that person.
Right. Look, it's a useful tool, but once again, you're going to have to make sure that there's someone honest and fair and nonpartisan that's going to be reviewing that material in a timely manner to ensure that it's made public to folks. And if that doesn't happen, you know, it's like, does a tree falling in the forest make a sound? I don't know.
Well, and interestingly, the governor was asked at this press conference whether or not he would be increasing the budget line for JCOPE, as it's going to be called, which will be replacing the PIC. We're sort of alphabet souping this a little bit. But and he said no, he didn't think so. Right off, he believed that actually they would be the same appropriation, at least in the first year. So that's interesting, too, because it's hard to basically police anything unless you are funded.
You know, I disagree with you there, Liz. I'm pretty familiar with the budget for that agency, having run half of it. A good bit of the money that's going there is being wasted right now on people that just aren't talented enough. And quite frankly, whoever comes in there ought to get rid of about 70–80% of the people on the first day.
So
and bring in
budget
new
cuts,
people.
you think? You think that this entity could actually do what it needs to do with its budget cut?
With the right executive director, absolutely. One of the things they should do is stop focusing on the lawyers they have there and bring in trained investigators. There's a pool of them here in Albany. They're called retired FBI agents.
Wait, just to be clear, David, you do want this job? I'm sorry, or you don't want this
I
job?
did say either way, Liz, but I'm telling you, as an idea, bring in the retired FBI agents as your investigators, and then turn the cases over to the appropriate law enforcement agencies when you make them.
Okay, unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I want to thank both of you for being here. Russ, just a final word. In terms of this not actually applying to the currently seated legislature, that goes also for the pension the forfeiture for anybody who actually commits a felony. So am I wrong in this? If somebody who's currently in the legislature is found guilty of a felony rather, that person, he or she, would not lose their pension unless it was after January 1st of the next year. Is that right?
That's my understanding, right.
Interesting. Okay. Well, this is actually pretty fascinating. It is a significant change in Albany, and of course, when we see the bill, we will have more details. I want to thank you very much. It's been great to see both of you. Russ Haven, thank you from NYPIRG, and David Grandow, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to